the producers of Tech AV Technical Training Aids welcome you to this presentation on the subject of welding safety. If you are in any way involved with welding or flame cutting processes, it becomes your responsibility to take the necessary precautions to avoid an injury to yourself or to anyone around you. The aim of this presentation is to bring to your attention the major hazards associated with manual welding and flame cutting processes. Some of the hazards we shall look at are specific to all processes, where others are related to a specific process. Any welding process involving the use of electricity poses a potential risk of electrocution. Industrial welding machines are designed to deliver high current outputs and usually operate off three-phase power supplies at 380 volts and more. Power cables are specially created for use with welding equipment, but owing to often harsh operating conditions, these cables do tend to become damaged and worn, thereby making them a safety risk. Never attempt to repair a damaged cable. Only a qualified person must perform this type of work. Welding machines are supplied with protective covers or panels. Unless you are qualified to do so, never remove the panels in an attempt to effect repairs to your welding machine. Electrode holders, torches, and guns that are badly damaged, or those with insulation in poor condition, are not safe to use. New or refurbished units should be installed by a qualified person. Never work in damp or wet conditions. This, where electricity is concerned, is really asking for trouble. Make sure that you always wear rubber-soled safety shoes or boots. Never work barefooted. At your welding bay, make use of wooden duckboards or rubber matting in order to minimize the chance of being electrocuted. Electrodes have to be replaced from time to time. Never attempt to do this if your hands or gloves are wet or damp. It is a good practice to make all your preparations and machine connections before connecting your machine to the mains power supply. Keep the earth clamp and electrode holder separated at all times. Never handle them both at the same time whilst the welding machine is powered up. Good electrical contact between the earth clamp or lug and the work is vital for a good weld and for safety's sake. Always ensure a bright metal contact point on your welding bench or workpiece to which your earth lead will be attached. An electrode holder, gun, or torch should, when not in use, be placed upon a suitable rack or stand. Never rest an electrode holder, a gun, or torch upon the metal welding table or the metal cover of the power unit. The main power supply should only be connected and switched on once you are actually ready to begin welding, or when you need to adjust settings that require the unit to be energized. Most processes that involve the welding or cutting of metal generate certain harmful emissions, such as heat and light. The arc generated by an electric welding process gives off very intense light emissions, as well as ultraviolet and infrared rays. The intense light can cause damage to the retina of the eye, whilst infrared radiation may damage the cornea and result in the formation of cataracts. Invisible ultraviolet light can cause arc eye or welder's flash, even after brief, unprotected exposure. Symptoms of arc eye or welder's flash, which may only begin many hours after exposure to UV light, include a feeling of sand or grit in the eye, blurred vision, intense pain, and headaches. Prolonged exposure may also lead to permanent blindness. For the reasons just stated, it is extremely important that welders using any arc process must protect their eyes using specially shaded lenses designed to absorb or filter out the harmful light rays. Arc intensity increases as the welding current increases, and for this reason, shaded lenses are available in varying shades. Filter lenses with shade numbers between 9 and 14 are used with arc welding processes. As a guide, use a shade number 12 when the current is below 175 amps, and use shades 13 or 14 when the welding current is higher than 175 amps. Normal vision through a filter lens is almost zero. However, once the arc has been struck, the lens allows sufficient light to pass through to enable the welder to observe the process. Reflected ultraviolet rays can also cause arc eye to anyone in the immediate vicinity. It is for this reason that those working in the area should protect their eyes by wearing flash goggles. We must, however, emphasize the fact that flash goggles do not offer protection against direct exposure to the arc. Wherever it is practically possible, welding screens should be positioned around the welding area in order to protect fellow workers or passers-by from direct arc flashes. Although not as severe as electric arc flash, the light emitted from gas welding and flame cutting processes will result in eye damage if eye protection is not used. Gas welding goggles fitted with shaded lenses having a shade factor of 3 to 5 offer suitable eye protection when performing gas welding and braze welding operations. For flame cutting, a filter shade factor of 6 to 7 is best suited for maximum protection. Beneath the shaded lens of both the welder's hood and gas welding goggles is a clear lens. The purpose of the clear lens is to protect your eyes from flying debris, for example when chipping a weld bead or grinding operations. It must be stressed that ordinary sunglasses do not offer adequate eye protection against flying particles or arc and gas-related light emissions. The arc of an electric welding process can be the cause of yet another injury, namely arc burn. Exposure to arc rays burns the human skin in much the same way as direct sunlight, but the result is a lot quicker. Arc burn can also lead to various skin disorders or diseases. Besides arc burn, physical burns from hot spatter, flux chippings and slag are very common. Your first level of skin protection is your overall. For maximum protection, your overall should be worn with the sleeves rolled down and the front fully buttoned up or zipped up. A welder's apron should be worn for all welding or cutting operations. This important item of PPE protects the body as well as your clothing from spatter and other hot debris. Protection to the skin of your face and neck area is provided by the welder's hood. Head and hair protection from spatter is achieved with a skull cap made from fire-resistant material. Note that baseball caps are not generally made of fire-resistant material and therefore are not suited to welding operations. Your hands are the closest part of your body to an arc or a flame, and they must be protected from the radiant heat, the harmful rays, and hot spatter by wearing the correct type of welding gloves or gauntlets. Chrome leather gloves and gauntlets are essential for shielded arc welding processes, as these offer the best protection against radiant heat and red-hot spatter. Some welding processes, such as gas welding, brazing, TIG, and MIG, generate less radiant heat and spatter than shielded metal arc processes. When using any of these processes, it is acceptable for the welder to wear soft leather gloves such as pigskin or goatskin, as these gloves offer much greater freedom of hand action than chrome leather. It should be noted, however, that only chrome leather gloves or gauntlets offer limited protection against skin burns arising from the occasional handling of hot metal workpieces. Very hot material should never be handled deliberately, even with gloved hands. Always use tongs or other suitable gripping tools for such purposes. And remember to mark the metal with the word hot so as to warn others of this fact if you decide to place it aside. The last items of standard PPE, which are recommended to be worn in all welding or cutting operations, are chrome leather spats. Spats prevent hot particles from entering your safety shoes or boots and inflicting severe burns to your feet. Finally, on the subject of burns, you must always seek medical attention in the event that you are burned through a welding process. Serious complications, usually from a secondary infection, can arise from the neglect of a burn. Fumes are an unavoidable byproduct of virtually any processes involving the heating of metal, and in most cases we must take steps to avoid breathing them, as many fumes may contain harmful toxins. Fumes become especially problematic whenever welding operations are performed in poorly ventilated areas. In such areas where welding is in progress, it is essential for a local fume extraction unit to be installed in the welding bay. If a fume extractor is not available, then always aim to perform welding operations in well-ventilated areas. Windows and doors should, wherever possible, be opened. The removal of paint and other coatings from metal parts before welding will help reduce the formation of harmful fumes when that section is being welded. Some types of metal, notably copper, zinc, and cadmium, emit toxic fumes when heated. The inhalation of such fumes poses a serious risk to health. Certain fluxes and filler rods may contain these substances. Always read the labels and take heed of any warning given on the packaging of filler rods and fluxes before you use them. It is strongly advised that you obtain and read relevant material safety data sheets concerning the materials that you intend to work with, so as to identify the hazards related to them. Respirators should be worn with any operation that generates harmful fumes, and especially those involving cadmium. It is, however, important that you have been fully trained in the selection and use of respirators. Due to the nature of welding and cutting processes, there is always a risk of fire, and the following steps must be taken to minimize this risk. Always make sure that there is a serviceable fire extinguisher close at hand, and that it is of the correct type, and that you know how to use it before you begin any hot work procedure. Do not weld in the immediate vicinity of flammable substances such as fuel, oil, paint, paper, chemicals, plastics, gases, and flammable dusts. Wherever it is unavoidable and welding or cutting must be carried out close to flammable substances, then the necessary engineering controls and work practices must be implemented before work commences. The welding or cutting of containers, such as empty fuel or solvent drums, is a highly risky practice. Flammable fumes will usually be present and could ignite as soon as welding or cutting begins. Never flame cut or effect any welding operation upon any pressure vessel, even when empty, as there is always the risk of that vessel exploding. Cables and hoses should never be laid over hot or sharp objects, or where they may become cut or crushed. Severed or heated gas hoses and electric cables could result in a serious fire or even an explosion. Ensure, when flame cutting, that gas hoses are not placed in such a way that hot slag or metal offcuts may land upon them and burn through. Remove paper towels, rags and other rubbish, as these will easily ignite from hot spatter and slag. Hot electrode stubs should be discarded into a sand tray, not onto the floor. Always maintain your equipment in good working order. Carry out regular inspections and report any defects as soon as they are noticed. Do not continue operating if you know that your equipment is faulty or unsafe. Welding, flame cutting, or any other hot work within a confined space poses many hazards for any worker, and specialized training is required before you will be allowed to undertake this type of work. A confined space is defined in legal terms under your country's occupational health and safety legislation, and you should familiarize yourself with these definitions. Very definite legal procedures must be in place for entry into and for work to be carried out within a classified confined space. It must be well noted that under industrial legislation, no worker will be permitted to enter or perform any work within a classified confined space without having received special training in the following: local legislation, entry and exit procedures, use of atmospheric monitoring equipment, use of breathing apparatus, the use of applicable safety equipment, and rescue procedures. By following safe practices and performing some basic tasks, you can minimize the risk of a major accident. To begin, never use equipment that you have not been trained to use. Ignorance is the cause of many accidents. Avoid the temptation to take shortcuts. Makeshift procedures always end up creating more work, and of course, they expose you to greater risk of injury. Whenever required, ensure that the equipment you use is fitted with approved and functional safety devices. Mechanical operations, such as threading a wire feeder, should be made with due care and regard to finger trapping. Avoid wearing jewelry, especially metal rings, watch straps and necklaces, as these can easily become hooked up in mechanical and electrical apparatus with severe consequences. When a job is completed, take the time to perform the proper shutdown procedure. Never leave equipment in a live state where untrained hands may be tempted to experiment. Maintain your equipment in proper working order. Don't wait for something to go wrong before carrying out maintenance. Sloppy maintenance is a major cause of accidents. Try, wherever possible, to keep your work area in a clean and tidy state. We all know how cluttered things can get in a busy factory or workshop, but clutter is a major cause of personal injury. A good welder, boilermaker or metal worker must consider many safety issues before actually applying the heat to the metal. We encourage you to adopt a safe working attitude and to settle for the safe way rather than the quick way. Remember, no job is that important or urgent that it can't be done safely.